Yeah. Hi, Neha.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry about the technical glitch that I had to face while logging in. A very warm welcome to every participant on the podium. Happy to have you all with this very interesting and a very close to heart topic to me. I talk very passionately about this. I hope at the end of the session, you will be able to take home some information and reassess your succession plan. So I will just share my presentation here. Khushbu, with your permission, can I share the PPT?
Yes, please, Neha.
In the meantime, audience are free to write down their questions, which Khushbu can share with me after my presentation. Feel free to jotting down your questions. Share screen. Perfect. Let me know if it's visible. Share. I'll do the PPT mode.
Yeah.
It's better now?
Yes.
All right. So interesting heading that Khushbu has given us. I'm a lawyer, so I talk about technicalities, but Khushbu and the team here from IMMPL has helped with this topic because they wanted to serve their audiences with a very practical thing, which is you may have a lot of wishes with respect to your asset, and there may always be a gap. Why I say always is what I'll discuss during the presentation. So briefly, the content of the presentation, I won't take a lot of technical points in the presentation, but briefly about the company that I work for, which is Catalyst, our milestones, our family office services, tools of succession planning, will and executorship, and a case study that we've discussed. This presentation is concentrating mostly on will as a tool of succession planning. There are other tools of succession planning as well, which we will cover as a series of presentation that we intend to do for our audience. So Catalyst is a 1997 incorporated company. We got a SEBI registered debenture trustee license in 98, and it has been 28 years of a very fruitful journey from our MD CEO, Mr. Dilip Dikshit. We are into most of the trusteeship services where we work with corporates, and proudly we say we are the market leaders in debenture trustee, AIF trustee, and escrow securitization. We work with NBFCs, lenders, etc. Now, behind every corporate is an individual, whether he's the promoter or he's the owner of the company or a CFO or CEO of the company. And in 2 years back, I joined Catalyst after 16 years of work experience with law firms and corporates, and mostly in wealth industry and trusteeship space. I joined them to institutionalize the family office service offering, which means I work with individuals and I take care of their estate and succession planning. So this is what we do at Catalyst. We cater to HNIs, ultra HNIs with respect to their, asset management, well, lifestyle, setting goals around intergenerational succession planning, estate and succession strategies. As I said, apart from will, there are tools of other tools of succession planning, which is trust. For a business family, it's family governance. And we just ensure that the wishes of the patriarch and the assets that he has built in his lifetime pass on in a very smooth manner to the next generation. Broadly, we do all these services. We'll share the presentation with you, so we'll get to know this. Let's move to the topic for today. What happens if you do not have an estate and succession plan? So first, let's talk about an estate. When I say estate, a lot of people say it's only real estate. No, real estate is only immovable property. Estate is even your salary account, savings account, your PPFs, your DMAT account, your insurances, the vehicle that you're driving, whether it's a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler, it's in your name, it's registered in your name. The flat that you live in, whether it's owned jointly or singly, your assets. So on 18, when you acquire age of majority in India, you get a PAN, which means you're liable to pay taxes to the government. You pay taxes only on assets that you own in your name, which means the day you acquire assets, you are supposed to do a planning for that asset as well. And why you need to do the planning? Because in India, if you do not have an estate plan, or you do not plan, you do not list down your assets, you do not plan for its nominations, you do not plan for its succession through a will, then your personal succession laws, which is based on your religion that you follow, will apply. For a Hindu, it is Hindu succession law. For a Muslim, it's the Sharia law. For a Catholic, Jew, Sikh, it's the Indian Succession Act. So to avoid forced heirship rules, forced heirship means it is all defined. The shares are identified, the individual classes of heirs are identified, and it the succession of your assets will fall as per the forced heirship rules. So to avoid that, having a simple will is very helpful. Administrative hassles. If you don't have a will, it all boils down to, for the legal heirs to first identify themselves as legal heirs, which means you get a family tree. You need to tell the relevant authorities where your bank account is or where the property is situated. You need to tell them that, okay, Neha Rai, a Hindu, has passed away. She is survived by her husband and 2 children, and they are the legal heirs in equitable proportion. They need to get the assets. So immediately on the passing away, you have to apply for death certificate, then you apply for a family tree, then you run to the court for a succession certificate. So there are a lot of administrative hassles, and therefore this box which talks about administrative hassles. Now, intestate succession, in case of Hindus, Hindu males and Hindu females, for that matter, even in other religion, there is the law, the forced heirship law, which I husband, his assets will go to his wife, which is me, to our 2 children, and to my husband's mother, which is my mother-in-law. So it's even if things are hunky-dory between the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, which is rarest of the rare case. I mean, not always things are fine. Then also you need to get the old mother-in-law to the various authorities to issue NOCs and relinquishments, and a lot of issues arise over there. So it is better that we plan our wishes and write down a simple will. Let's move to the next slide. Tools of succession planning, as I said, will is what we'll talk about in detail, and trust is something that we'll touch upon very briefly over here, because we wanted to highlight that will is something that comes into effect post the lifetime of a person. But if you want to plan something time, you need to execute the will. You may need a probate certificate in few cities. I'll come to that later. And sometimes you need a succession certificate as well when there is no will. So why every family should have a will? As I mentioned earlier, every family, every individual should have a will, because you have assets. You need to make your family or your legal heirs aware about what all have you earned during your lifetime. So you list down the assets, you write down your wishes with respect to each asset in the will. You are ensuring avoiding a family dispute. A son and a daughter, you may give 50 to your son and 25 to your wife and 25 to your daughter, because you've spent a lot of money in your daughter's wedding, whereas you want to give your business to your son who's running the show for you. So you better make it clear through a will, so that there is no fight, or they don't say that it has to be equitable. So might as well do something now to avoid any disputes among the family members later. Other important and crucial part is, through your will, which called a testamentary document. You can appoint a testamentary guardian to minor children. So me and my husband, we have two minor children. If something happens to me, I would definitely, the father is the first natural guardian. But if something happens to the two of us, our bank accounts where I may have nominated my husband and my husband has nominated me, where and how do the children get a right in case something happens to both of us? The money in the bank account will not be allowed to be touched by anybody, and of course not the minor children. So my relatives, which includes my brother or my husband's cousin brothers or the parents, will have to go to the court to get the guardian appointed. Then only they can operate the bank account where the money is lying. So in my will today, I can say my husband is the first legal guardian for my children. In case my husband is predeceased, then I appoint my brother as the guardian for my children. Basis that will, where I have appointed a guardian, my minor children can be taken care of. Guardian is only taking care of my assets being enjoyed by my children. He's a custodian, he's a trustee for the time being, till my children attain majority. I, in my will, can also decide the age of majority. It need not be 18. It can be 21, 25, 30, the way I wish. So it's a beautiful way of appointing guardians for minor children. Then avoids forced heirship or the government directed asset distribution. We already discussed that. Now, a lot of people in this forum may say, I've already written a will. In the next two slides, we are talking about do's and don'ts of having a will or the kind of will that you should have. The first thing is, I'll keep giving examples from my client interactions or the experience that I have. KYC audit, what does it mean? So, my maiden name was Neha Rai. After marriage, I became Neha Rai Mathur. Few of my bank accounts, my PAN, before marriage, everything was Neha Rai. My few bank accounts, which are still there, which my father was operating there, my name was still Neha Rai. I had to do a exercise of updating my KYC for all my accounts. My PVF account, which was opened before marriage, had Neha Rai. So I sat one day to see all my insurance policies had Neha Rai because it was my maiden name and it was all my assets before my marriage. So KYC audit is where we help client identify any discrepancies in their name, father's name, date of birth. We ask them only to do this exercise. We just tell them this is a red alert. Like I'll give you one example where my one of my client, he's from south of India. His name in one document is R. Govindan. In the other document is Raghavendra G. R. G. Govindan Raghavan, Raghavan Govindan. And I keep giving this example because it's a live case. So if the exercise of doing a nomination audit is the first thing that we do, in case still at some bank accounts or some insurance policy you're not able to update your name, we ask our clients to do a self-declaration affidavit, which means I will write, I Neha Rai as per my PAN, I Neha Rai Mathur as per my passport is one and the same person. I get it on 100 rupees or a 500 rupees stamp paper. Now the stamp duties in Bangalore have increased in Karnataka. So from 100, we do it for 500. And it's a self-attestation and we get it notarized also. Keep it handy. In case something happens to me, my family can go with this self-declaration affidavit that before passing away or before she reached a medical incapacity, she had done this and she's the same person. So let us operate her accounts. It's a very handy piece of document which has helped few of my clients in past. So KYC audit, everybody should do it. Next, nomination audit. Now, my example only I'll take. My father had a bank account where he was a nominee. And after marriage, my legal heirs, as per Hindu law, become my husband and children. Now, if I die one fine day without leaving a will, or say I have written a will also to say that everything goes to my husband, my father can happily walk into that branch which has my father registered as a nominee and withdraw that money. Now, there is a claim which my husband has to raise against my father to say that the will says so, or as per the forced heirship laws, in case I don't have a will, legal heir is my husband and my two children. So I need to do a nomination audit. In the will, when I'm writing, I shouldn't say everything goes to my wife or everything goes to my husband. Generally, husband and wife do a mirror will and they just give assets to each other. Just do a nomination audit. Ensure that your wishes in the will is aligned with the nominations that you've done for your accounts. Other thing, very simple wills that you can pull out from Google or Chat GPT, or your chartered accountant can help you with a simple draft to say, just say everything that I leave behind goes to so and so. You are not doing listing down of assets. Now, your children may be outside of India, and every time they visit your house, which you've left under lock and key, they find some checkbook, they find some insurance policy, they find some physical shares, and they are just figuring out things during their lifetime. They may be like, why couldn't my father or mother just do indexing of assets? Maintain a diary, your NSDL statement can be printed out and kept so people know where the assets are. It is just about maintaining a hygiene and leaving the assets which you are not enjoying during your lifetime and you want to leave for your children, might as well leave in a manner that they can enjoy or they can take it in their custody with ease. So listing down assets comprehensively, even if you don't want to do it as part of your will, do it as part of your asset register. Now, next point which we have listed is identify beneficiary for each asset class. I've seen in past that they just leave it a simple will. A lot of people write that I want to give everything to my wife. End of the story. What if the wife has predeceased and you reach a state where you couldn't amend your will? Now you have 3 children. Who gets what? So identify the succession plan for beneficiaries. It's a very simple exercise. You should have it crystal clear. It's will writing is a one-time exercise. Let's do it in a fashion that you don't have to sit with it again every year and amend it. Have a broad idea about what you want to do and just get it in place and plan for a future so that you don't have to amend it again and again. Executor appointed and succession plan for successor executors. Now, a lot of people say, my beneficiaries are executors. Why do I have to name them? I mean, it doesn't take much to name an executor and the successor executor. So have an executor, even if they are beneficiaries identified in the will. It makes the life easier for the person who is reading, interpreting, and executing your will. Next is residuary assets and residuary beneficiary. I had a very interesting case which went to the probate court in Bangalore, where Khushbu, you want to take question now or later? How do you format this?
We'll take questions at the end, Neha.
All
That
right,
will-
makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure. Neera ji, you'll have to wait, please. Or you want to type down your question. There, I see a raise of hand, that's why. So residuary assets and residuary beneficiary, I was just telling you about the case that we had to help resolve. There was this one gentleman who wrote a will in somewhere in 2010 or 11, where he had 2 demat accounts. Then he moved the wealth manager changed jobs from one wealth management company to the other, and a new demat account was opened in the new wealth planning firm. Will was not updated, and the will which was done previously listed the 2 demat accounts, and it did not say any other demat account, any other bank account, any residuary asset that I may acquire in future, anything that I inherit, or any new account that I open will go to so and so beneficiary. Because this clause was missing, there were only 2 demat accounts which were listed there. The depository DP's compliance department raised an alarm and said, as per the will, since we've seen the copy of a will, we are transferring these holdings in the demat account to so and so named beneficiary. However, the 3rd demat account, which also belongs to this gentleman, where only one daughter was a nominee and second daughter was not a nominee, but the other 2 demat accounts which were listed in the will were given equally to the 2 daughters, there was a discrepancy. First, the demat account was not listed. Second, only one daughter was identified as beneficiary, not both the daughters. So a residuary asset was not listed and a residuary beneficiary was not identified. If the will had a clause to say whatever I leave behind on the day of my demise, which is not listed in the will that I've done in 2010, goes to my 2 daughters equally, it would have helped. But because this clause was missing, and there was more than 5 lakh rupees in the demat account as per SEBI regulation. Anything over and above 5 lakh, you need to follow the proper succession planning process. And therefore, we had to apply for a probate of the will. We had to take an order that 2 daughters get it equally. And it took, because of COVID time, it took almost 10 months for us to get that order. One daughter was in US, one daughter was in India. It was a lot of issue. And things were fine between the 2 daughters. They were like, one was ready to relinquish that, give it to the other daughter. But because of technical issues which the DP and the legal system follows in India, it just went in a loop. And there was a cost involved to get the probate of almost 2 lakh rupees that were spent. Testamentary guardianship, I already discussed about. Execution formalities, the law says minimum 2 witness, minimum. You can have more. Have a doctor as a witness or get a medical certificate. I'll talk about it later. Registration of a will, yes, it's not required by law. It's not mandatory by law, but a registered will makes the document more foolproof. Like it is accepted by a lot of departments, and it is most of the time, if not challenged, treated as the final document. If your will is registered and you have not amended it later on or have not written a fresh will, then a registered will comes at as the final document, and you are ruling out any future challenges to the will as well. Provision for non-existence of all family members. Like generally, people just talk about giving everything to the wife and then to the 2 children. Now, if the whole family is on a holiday and something happens to the 4 of them together, have you identified the residuary beneficiary if none of the family members are available? So it is always better to seek legal and guidance and also financial advice, because you may have some assets which are in lock-in. You may have some assets which will have tax consequences if you redeem. So whether transmission of those financial assets is a good idea, or redeeming it and transferring money to the beneficiary is a good idea. Always take a financial expert's advice. And while drafting a will, a legal person's help will always help, because you don't go to a general physician when you have a heart attack. You go to a heart specialist. It's just something like that. The don'ts, the opposite of the do's mostly. People do not capture the family tree. So legal heirs who are there entitled to get your assets should be listed in the will document for ease of identifying the beneficiaries. I discussed the second point, nominee is different from beneficiary. So do a nomination audit, align your legal heirs and nominees. List down your assets at least as on the day of your you're writing the will, and keep updating the asset register by either attaching your NSDL statement or just an index of assets that you can amend and file it with your will. If you're doing an unequal distribution, which I spoke about, that you've given everything to your daughter during her wedding and now you want to give most of your assets to the son, record it carefully so that your daughter gets to hear it from you in very clear words that this is the father's or the mother's intention, that I've done my bit and now whatever I'm left with, I want to give it to the son, for like he's taking care of me during my old age, or he's running the show for me, the business is being run by him. So make it very clear. So even if the matter goes to the court, the judge should be able to decipher from the bill document that this is what the intention was, and let us respect the wishes of the patriarch. Executors not being named, it's not a major issue. People have got the wills executed through beneficiaries, but some paperwork maybe here and there required, so might as well name the executor. Residuary assets not covered, as I've spoken about it. Again, a lot of misconception that you need to have a stamp paper for will writing. No. There's a concept of holographic will, which means you write your will in hand on a piece of paper. That's also acceptable. Just that 2 witnesses need to sign. Multiple copies of a will. So today I'm in Bangalore, I write a will. Tomorrow I'm flying to Delhi. I reach Delhi. Before taking flight back to Bangalore, I decide to change my will. 1 copy is here. I leave it with my child here. 1 copy is there, which I didn't tear or didn't revoke. So if I die during my flight from Delhi to Bangalore, then there are 2 copies of a will and they are not reading with each other. So it's a discrepancy. So if you're writing a fresh will, please revoke the old will. Please tear it apart. Do not leave copies, multiple wish letters. it is just, you're gone when the will is being read out, and the legal heirs and the beneficiaries will be struggling to understand what exactly was the ask, what was that she wanted. The grounds to challenge a will in India is one of the most easiest ground to challenge the will is that the person writing the will was not in a sound state of mind when he or she wrote that will. To rule that out, we take a medical certificate from the doctor. You don't have to go to a psychiatrist. You can just go to your general physician also, or to your family doctor, and we have a format which we ask the clients to give to the doctor, and then he issues it on his certificate with his registration number. Uh, don't look at minor or sentimental assets. You may want to say that my diamond solitaire goes to my daughter, whereas the normal American diamond necklace goes to my daughter-in-law. So please list it down, don't create confusion. Then tax implications on non-relative beneficiary. I think let's I'll delete this point from the presentation. You can will out anything to a non-relative also. It's for them to get the asset and then pay the taxes. So it's not my prerogative when I'm writing a will. It is for the receivers to take care of. Avoid delaying updates after major life events. So when a son gets married, you may want to exclude the daughter-in-law. When the daughter gets married, you want to exclude the son-in-law. So do that. Makes a lot of sense. When a grandchild is born, add the child and say that the son cannot sell this property. I want to give it to the third generation. I want to continue the legacy in the family. Do that. Write it down. Don't store the will in the bank locker. Bank locker which belong to you will get it will not be allowed to be operated. The bank will ask for a copy of succession certificate or a will, or somebody who's authorized to operate the bank account after the demise. So there was a case, one of my friends, some uncle passed away, lot of dispute in the family. The matter went on in the court for 17-18 years. When the court order came to go and take charge of all the assets, they went to the bank to get the locker operated, and a beautifully drafted will was lying in that locker. So nobody knew that the will was there. So that's very surprising but very funny.
Neha,
Executives.
sorry, I would just want to pause. I would request everyone to post their questions in the Q&A section. I see a couple of hands raised, so request everyone to post the questions in the Q&A section. We'll take it at the end of the session. Thank you.
So since Catalyst acts as a corporate executor, we have highlighted the roles and responsibilities of executor here, and how having an executor named, the roles and responsibility identified, makes the life of the beneficiaries and legal heirs so easy. As a corporate executors, we do all this. When an executor is named in the will, they have to give their consent. They can't just be named without telling them that they are getting appointed as executor. So you name an executor, you tell them where the will is kept. So when the demise happens, the executor will walk in, take out the will copy, read it out aloud to the legal heirs, apply for the probate. What is the probate? Let me touch upon this first. Probate means a certification from the court of law validating the will as the last and final will of the deceased person. Probate is not mandatory to be applied in all the cities in India. It is required only for the properties located in Bombay, Chennai, and Kolkata. So if you have properties in one of these cities, you need the legal heirs will have to go to the probate court, pay the probate fees, appoint a lawyer, wait for the probate proceedings, which includes reading out the will, sending notices to the legal heirs, calling the witnesses to the court to testify that they did sign that will and their capacity as witness. The court has to be satisfied that this is the last and final will written by the deceased person. The wishes are identified. The court will say, now you can go and execute the will. And with the probate order, which is like a civil suit being filed, the court fees being paid, the court giving an order that this is the final will and these are the wishes of the testator, they need to be executed. With the copy of the will, you'll go walk into the sub-registrar office and say, this is the death certificate, this is the probate order from the court. Now transfer the property in my name as a bequest. Whereas this is for Bombay, Chennai, and Kolkata. Please remember this please hear this out very carefully. Don't get confused. Vis-a-vis, if you have a real estate in Bangalore, you have a registered will. In the will, Neha has written, if I had a property in Bangalore, I will say, on my demise, this property goes to my husband. I die, I register the will. I get it, 2 witnesses to the sub-registrar office. I have a properly registered will. I have listed down the real estate. I have listed down my financial assets. The property address with the PIN code is mentioned. I register the will in the same sub-registrar office where my will is registered. I register the will in the same registrar office where my property is registered. So I stay in Dumlur. I have a BDA complex where the sub-registrar office is situated, where my property is registered. I write my will on 26th of June 2025. I go to the registrar office with 2 witnesses, get my will register. I die on one fine day. My husband will, with a copy of my death certificate and this registered will go to BBMP, will go to the Domlur sub-registrar office at the BDA complex and say she is dead. Now the bequest will come to me. So the property in e-khata will be in his name, basis my registered will. This is the simplest way of doing transfer of assets in a city like Bangalore, or for that matter, other cities except for Bombay, Chennai, Kolkata. Now, will generally doesn't talk about the debts, like people may have pulled some templates from whatever sources available. They will not say that my loan which is going with the bank should be paid first because it's a secured, the bank is a secured creditor, or they'll take away the property. My income taxes should be closed. So if something happens to me in this financial year when 25-26 assessment year is going on, my taxes for this year have to be paid and my PAN has to be surrendered and closed. Any other liability which can be a credit card bill or my house on rent, for which I've taken a deposit from a tenant, that needs to be paid back from my estate before the beneficiaries get that asset. So this is all we should cover when writing a will. Taking care of distribution of assets to the beneficiary, whether it's a bank account, whether it's a demat, whether it's insurance policies, the executor responsibility is to ensure that all the paperwork is done to transfer the assets in the name of the named beneficiary. Then, as I said, maintaining records and reporting to the legal authorities. The file of the deceased person has to be closed in all records, all the bank accounts closed, PAN surrendered, etc., etc. And applicable law and deceased wishes are taken care of. So, role of an executor is very crucial, and beneficiaries can also be executor in the will. I've discussed this. Same thing. We discussed that consequences of dying intestate can be very unwelcoming, can be very disturbing, can be at the same time, while things are hunky-dory in the family, can cause a lot of administrative hassles, a lot of trouble for the beneficiaries, especially if they are NRIs and they don't understand the process to be followed in the with the Indian authorities, and the multiple visits and the applications and the affidavits and the stamp papers and the notaries, etc., that are required. It may just be very troublesome. While the family is already struggling with the demise of the person, now you have real estate in Indiranagar, which values at 15 crores. You don't know how to get it transferred or get it sold to somebody, because to sell also, you need an owner. The owner has passed away. How do you transfer the ownership to somebody who can sign the sale deed, get the money, pay the taxes, take the money out? It's a lot of complication, while having a simple will can solve a lot of issues. Delays in probate and emotional strain and unintended beneficiaries also can come in. We don't know what all can happen. Litigation is a costly affair at that time. You will run helter-skelter behind some lawyer who can do it in a very spick and span manner. While I shouldn't be saying this, a lot of people are hesitant in paying a good estate planning lawyer a decent fee to get a will in place. So might as well think about the future and plan accordingly. What makes a will valid? Obviously, it has to be clearly stating down your wishes, listing down the assets, identifying beneficiaries, signatures of witnesses, and update any. I've discussed this very briefly. Let's move. We'll talk about a case study. Instead of that, Khushbu, I would rather take questions considering the time that we have. And I'm sure these questions will be covered in one of the cases or one of the questions that our participants will have.
Sure, Neha. So I'll just read out the questions. Meanwhile, I'll request other attendees to post down the questions in the Q&A section, if any. So yeah, very first question, Neha. It's from one of our advisors that many of my clients own assets in multiple countries. How should we advise them to structure their estate plan to avoid probate and minimize tax complications globally? Can you
Very
share a
interesting.
brief overview to handle such queries?
Okay. Now, again, people may say that I want to do only one will for assets in India, in Singapore, in Dubai, in US, and property in Portuguese visa ke liye I bought a property or a Greece property. Now, while it legally there is no hindrance from having one will for global assets, let's think from a practical perspective. And an estate planning lawyer, I completely understand the difficulties of having multiple documents, but let's practically think from execution part of it. Now you have a property in Bombay where you need to submit the original will in the probate court. And at the same time, if you have a property in Singapore, there is a mandatory probate process in Singapore also. And they will ask for the original will. They'll ask for the original copy of the will there also. If you have only one will and you've already submitted for probate in Bombay, the process in Singapore will get stalled. So, being common law countries, you create a similar document, but for every jurisdiction, follow the law of the land, as I always say. So, have a specific will for each jurisdiction. You may have a common or make a reference of the other will to say that this will is only for my India assets, and for my US assets, I've done a separate will. For my Singapore assets, I've done a separate will. So you don't have to have like one common thread for all the beads in the necklace. You can have a reference of each will in the other will and ensure concurrent execution post the eventuality. That makes the life easier. So my advice to your advisor is to advise your client to have different wills in different jurisdictions.
Got it. Thank you, Neha. Moving on to the next. What is an entitlement deed we get to hear as part of succession planning?
Entitlement deed. Are you talking about Indian law? I'm sorry, I haven't heard of
Yeah,
it.
I think it pertains to Indian law.
I don't know what is entitlement deed. I am sorry.
Okay, would request whosoever has posted that question if you can rephrase the same in the Q&A section. Next, can the executors be the main beneficiaries if more than one, say if there are two children?
Absolutely. But again, they can be joint executors also. However, then if they don't come to a consensus, like you have one real estate and you say, I give this jointly to my two children, and my two children are also the joint executors in the will. Now, one child will say, I have emotional attachment to this property, I don't want to sell it. The other child will say, I want to get done with the property, let's sell it and distribute the monies. There will be a deadlock. They may not be consensus between the two of them. So think through and avoid any kind of deadlock, or interpretation of the will shouldn't become an issue. So let's, if you want to make the beneficiaries the executors, ensure it is one after the other.
Got it. Next, is it important for every will to have a medical certificate of mental fitness to add to its validity?
No. Validity? No. But as I said, the ground for challenging a will and filing a suit after the demise of a person is on the soundness of mind. So it is better that you take a medical certificate, because it will come as a proof to the court and to the whole wide world that the person who wrote the will was in a sound state of mind, because the person is already gone to come and prove anything. And also, just for the information of the audience, in Mumbai, in the city of Mumbai, the registrar does not register a will if you don't get a medical certificate. In Delhi, the other exercise that is being conducted by the sub-registrars, not all, but few, not as a matter of legal requirement, but to avoid any issues later on, the sub-registrars are video recording the consent of the testator, that yes, you are signing in your when you're in sound mind. So he'll ask a question. आपने ये पढ़ लिया है, आपको समझ में आया है, आप साइन कर रहे हैं अपनी मर्जी से, then he'll say yes.
So different cities, different states, different rules and laws.
So the law is the same. You don't have to register. These are this protocol to avoid a dispute or the matter going to the court.
Got it. Got it. Moving to the next one. I wish to write two wills with two different distinct assets, favoring two different beneficiaries with two different executor on two different dates. There's no mix-up of assets or beneficiary or executor in this arrangement. Is it legally valid? If not, what is the solution, as I want both the wills to be handled separately?
So I write a will for a property that I have in Bombay and one property that I have in Bangalore. I inform my son that the Bangalore property belongs to you. I inform my daughter that the Bombay property belongs to you. And they are not talking to each other. They don't know that Neha has given her Bangalore property to the son and Bombay property to the daughter. I pass away. And now my son gets to know that there's a property in Bombay also. He has all the rights to claim it. And likewise, the daughter can also claim it. So might as well, what I will do is, while I can write two separate wills, I'll also make a cross-reference of the other one, that I've made a separate will for a property in Bangalore and I've given it to. Make it very clear and obvious. It's like your wish letter, but you don't want to leave any ambiguity for it to be challenged and taken to a court for the judge to decide what was it that was going in my mind. So it will all be left to the discretion of the witnesses or the judge's discretion, reading the evidences. So make it foolproof. You can do two wills for two assets to two different beneficiaries because you want to ensure that the execution is quick. But it shouldn't happen that somebody challenges the will. So make a reference of the other document. That's all.
Got it, Neha. So next is, if one child has the locker nominated to him, can we not place the will there? The child anyways has the authority to operate the locker after.
If the child is also the executor in the will, you have informed the executor and he has the keys to go and open the locker and take out the will, might as well.
Got it. Can I write a one single will where I can pass on to wife, and after my wife's demise, the assets go to the two daughters?
So it's a very interesting question that I have to answer in every meeting that I do with my clients, because they say that, see, as long as my wife is alive, I want to give everything to her, but I need to ensure that she doesn't give it to her brother or to her sister. It should go to my children only. Now, after you are gone, your wife has become the owner and she has the right to sell the property to give it to anybody XYZ. The obligation which you put in the will that after my wife passing away, it should go to my children is a moral obligation. Unless there is a way to tweak around the language a bit to say that, okay, I want to secure a roof on my wife's head after my passing. So I want my wife to enjoy this property, reside in this property. I am giving her rights to living rights in the house, but not the ownership rights. Ownership goes to my son. But till the time my wife is alive, my son cannot sell this property without my wife's consent. So living rights go to the wife, ownership goes to the son.
So in that case, the consent at the end is at the wife's discretion, right?
But the ownership is with the son. If he, in his own sweet will, ignores the wishes of the father to have a roof over the mother, legally he has the right of doing it. Unless the registrar, where you have registered the will in his own wisdom, or the new buyer who is then buying the property, if I were to buy that property and I see that, okay, mother is alive and the son is selling it where the will says he can't, then as a genuine buyer, I may not buy that property, but it requires a lot of due diligence. If the seller doesn't show me the will document, then I will buy it and the mother can challenge the sale later on.
Correct. Got it. If a will has been created, signed, registered, can we keep adding an annexure of list of things, as the list can be dynamic and may change time to time?
So once you have registered the will and you have in the will document, you've not listed down your movable assets because it's a very fragile asset. It keeps evolving. You may close a bank account, you may open a new bank account. What we generally do is um, we only index the CRN numbers. Like I have 2 bank accounts, I have 2 demat accounts. You don't list down the folios, you don't list down the equity holdings in the demat accounts, or we just say all my investments through the CRN with IMMPL managed by Khushbu. So my children as beneficiary will know that they have to contact Khushbu to say that whatever is there with which is maintained by International Money Matters should pass on in this manner. So you keep updating the NSDL statement, keep printing out every month and putting it, which you can do. But at least list down the assets. Think from a perspective that you're gone and your children are figuring out where your assets are. Will indexing the CRN and make life easier? Yes, definitely.
Right. Uh, Moving on, is the unstamped, unregistered will accepted legally?
Unstamped means see, will is not on stamp paper. As I said,
It's will.
even a handwritten will is absolutely okay. Now, if I leave a handwritten will where I say everything goes to my daughter, and my somewhere I had written that I typed one document where I'd written everything goes equally to my 2 children. Later on, both of them will definitely fight. So that's why I rather have one document and register it with the sub-registrar. And where I say everything goes equally to the 2 children. While an unregistered will is legally acceptable, it is better to register the will, because if you go with the copy of your unregistered will to the sub-registrar office or to the bank or to any depository participant, they will say first get a court order that this is the last and final will, because such multiple copies of such documents can come out.
So Neha, if it's a written will, you would still suggest to have witness out there in the handwritten wills as well?
2 witnesses are a must, minimum 2 witnesses.
Okay. Okay. And what happens to the residual assets, one that is not listed on the wills?
So generally, people who do simple will, they'll just say all my movable assets, which I leave behind without listing them, even the CRN number. Financial assets definition is too broad. From bank account to your post office
Yeah.
records to your PPF to your
NPS,
insurance,
ETF.
NPS, everything, AIF, PMS, everything. I will just have an elaborate definition of movable assets, and I'll say it goes to my husband. And my nominee in all these accounts is also my husband. So the best thing is you don't have to produce the copy of the will. The nominee can go and exercise his rights to the assets. Financial assets is taken care of. Nomination works conveniently. Real estate, there's no concept of nomination. Therefore, you should always list down the complete address, get the will registered in the same sub-registrar office. BBMP and e-Khata and everything will be updated with registered will. If it's unregistered, they will say get a succession certificate.
Got it. And what happens if the witness have passed away before it comes for probate?
See, if your will is not being challenged, nobody is questioning the bequest plan. The matter is not going to the court. Witnesses are only called in the court to testify that yes, I witnessed Neha Rai signing this will, and this is the last and final will. So it is better to have younger individuals who outlive you as witnesses. Always makes sense. But if the witnesses have passed away and you get to know during your lifetime that okay, these 2 passed away, I might as well reprint the document, re-sign it with 2 witnesses.
Got it. So Neha, one of our attendees has asked, what happens to the shares and such assets which keep changing with every transaction? So do you suggest mentioning the values in the will, or how would you like us to go about it?
Estate planning lawyer should not know the valuation of your assets. He should only know indexing of assets. That okay, she has 5 bank accounts, 2 demat accounts, 5 insurance policies, 2 vehicles, 2 properties. Valuation of the property, assets in the bank account, assets in the demat, whether you hold Microsoft stock or you hold any stock which is not performing also. I have nothing to do with it. I am just indexing your assets.
So, Neha, I think this is more pertaining to mentioning in the will. In terms of in the wills, should we mention the valuation of the assets that we own or something? Or
No need. That's what I'm saying. Estate planning lawyer should not know the valuation. Otherwise, I'll also say that give me 1% valuation of your asset when I'm drafting your will. And my fees will be more. No need to give valuation of your asset in the will. You just need to index your assets.
so if as an individual, I want to say that, okay, I own shares or have mutual funds, and out of that, let's say 30 lakhs goes to my daughter.
That ways.
That ways, yeah.
Sorry. My bad. I could understand.
Yeah.
Now again, if you can decide a percentile, you can decide a valuation, you can just say equitably to the two of them, or you can say as per the nomination that I've done in the Demat account. There were multiple ways of doing it. If you were to say valuation, ideally the valuation should be that much post your demise also. What
Yeah.
if the valuation falls short because the markets have gone down? Some people say 50-50% equally. Some
Yeah.
people say for like they don't give a number to it. They won't say that currently my assets size is 1 crore and 50-50 goes to so and so. They will just say whatever is the valuation, give 50-50 after paying all the debts and liabilities, etc., etc.
So it's always good to be on the safer side, just put percentages. That's better. Yeah.
Much better. Again, one more part to this is you may say the child may say later on, or the beneficiary may say, don't liquidate it. I want the assets, like I want to
As is.
continue to hold the assets, the shares. I don't
Yeah.
want to sell the shares. So that's why connect with the wealth advisor, connect with the tax consultant, take a call at that time. In the will, you should always say beneficiary is and the executor should consult a financial advisor and then do either a redemption or a transmission.
Got it. Interesting, Neha, when you said that, okay, in the will, it should be either you redeem it after consulting a wealth advisor. So let's say there are cases that come that, okay, so and so person has passed away. We don't want to go ahead with the transmission process. Can we just
Right.
redeem and it can come in the bank accounts, because dealing with bank accounts and closing them is much easier. So do you kind of promote that, or it's valid?
See, if
No.
even if it's a joint account, me and my husband, if I die, the status of the account will change. The account number changes. The bank closes that. They open a new account in the name of the survivor.
Got it.
So you keep the bank account active till the time all the redemption money comes to that account, which is linked to the investment.
Got it. We'll take 2-3 more questions, and I can see many other questions. We will try to answer all other questions offline as we are running short of time. Unless and until Neha, you can.
I'm fine. I started late, so I might as well continue.
Okay, great. So what are the complications and benefits of having beneficiary act as executor?
No complication. As long as they are aligned, they are not disputing the bequest. It is best to have the beneficiaries only as the executor. A lot of people do not want to involve a third party in their personal affair. The wife is a primary beneficiary, wife is the first executor. Wife has predeceased, the son or the elder daughter, the elder one is the first executor, and then the second one is the second executor, or they are joint executors. In case there is a deadlock, the auntie will come in, or the uncle will come in, or the trust advisor will, somebody trusted by the family will come in as a mediator. Yeah.
Okay. Is the legal inheritance tax-free whether the beneficiary in a will is a relative or otherwise?
It's tax-free. Bequests are tax-free. Once you have acquired the asset and it becomes the asset of a non-relative, relevant taxes need to be paid. But bequest is tax-free.
Okay, got it. Do you vet draft will? Okay, moving on to the next one. If the will is made in Chennai or Kolkata, Mumbai, for properties outside these 3 cities, is a probate required?
For assets in these 3 cities, probate is mandatory. For real
Okay.
estate in cities other than these 3 cities, probate is not mandatory. Also, the clause in the Indian Succession Act says if you have real estate in these cities or you have written a will in these 3 cities,
Huh.
probate is mandatory. So there is a client of mine who passed away. The husband passed away, wife is there. The husband was being treated in Tata Hospital for cancer. He passed away there, and before his passing, he wrote a will, unregistered will. When it came to Bangalore, because there were real estate in Bangalore, the court, the sub registrar asked for a probate because it was a will written in Bombay. So we had to go through the probate exercise in Bangalore.
Got it. For which assets giving life interest is possible in will? Also, can you restrict sale of assets under will? I think restrict sale of assets you've already covered. But giving life interest in will, is it
Only
possible?
only real estate, no, because living rights in that. Otherwise, ownership has to go to somebody.
Giving life interest.
Life interest means the same thing, that mother
Okay.
will have a living right
Okay.
and the ownership goes to so and so.
Got it. Can we create two wills for assets in India with two different set of beneficiaries?
We discussed that.
Yeah,
You can do it, but they should read to each other. It shouldn't be challenged later on.
got it. Entitlement deed that we spoke about, right, at the beginning. So what the person has mentioned is entitlement deed where the person, one sec, entitlement to deed where the person gets a right to use but not sell the asset while the person creating the deed is alive and the property passes on to the person in whose favor entitlement deed is there.
It's, I think, the same as living rights.
Living rights, yeah.
Looks like that. I'm sorry, I haven't come across any entitlement deeds.
Got it. Can the will be challenged in the court if the legal heirs don't agree with it?
Anybody can challenge a will.
Yeah.
A will written by Khushbu to say everything goes to her father. I can come and say that no, Khushbu told me she's giving everything to me.
Yeah.
For the court to decide, yeah.
You spoke about a testamentary trust. Can you explain how it is different from a will and when would you recommend each?
I never spoke about trust. I talked about testamentary guardian. Trust is something which we will talk about later. But testamentary guardian is, firstly, what is the meaning of a testamentary document? Which means my will is a testamentary document. What I'll write as my testament during my lifetime. So, in my testamentary document, which is my will, I am appointing a guardian for the benefit of my children who are minors till they attain whatever age I define. And a testamentary trust is, in my will, I say, on my passing, a trust has to be created, which will be an irrevocable trust, obviously, because I, as the settler of the asset, has died. Will is being read out after my passing. And I say all my assets go and sit in Neha Family Private Trust to be managed by my husband for the benefit of my husband and my 2 children. So all my assets, the ownership doesn't pass to an individual, but through a testamentary trust, it goes into a trust that is created post my lifetime.
Got it. Can you share how to handle RSUs in US demat accounts? Will the will declared in India accepted in US?
So first thing first, before I answer this question, is you need to check with your depository who is holding your RSU, what is the process. They will, your HR and the depository where you maintain your RSUs or ESOPs will have a standard process. Now, in my past experience, I have held a client with RSUs for a company which was not a US company, but the depository was a US depository. So they came back saying, since you cannot travel to the US to do the succession planning, because there's no nomination in RSUs, you need to have a will for your RSUs. You can't move your RSUs to a trust also because it belongs to you. So a will is required. In the US, probate is mandatory again. Even the IRS will come and see the valuation of your RSUs. If the IRS thinks you are above the threshold limit, then you are liable to pay inheritance tax also. My other client got an advice that you get a will registered in India for only your RSUs. Don't mix your India assets in it. So we did 2 wills for this client. This gentleman who had RSUs, he was a senior citizen. We did an India registered will for only his India assets and 1 will only for US assets. And there was a reference made in both the wills for the respective wills. So India will talked about a registered will for US RSUs, and the US will talked about that this will is only for US assets, and for my other assets in other jurisdiction, I've done a separate documentation. So on his passing away, the will registered with Shivaji Nagar sub registrar will go to US probate. IRS will get to know that he has passed away. They will check if there is a tax liability. They'll take the tax. Then the RSUs will be liquidated and the money will be given to the beneficiaries because legal heirs cannot hold RSUs.
Quite a bit of complications involved.
I know I spoke a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Could you please throw some light on family settlement agreement and how it is different from writing a will?
Family settlement agreement and will. Interesting. Now see, will is a document that talks about your wishes. You list down assets, you identify beneficiary, you pass away, your will is read out, your assets are transferred. Simple. Very simply put. Family settlement document is, again, you're talking about two things. You will write, your whole family will sit together, discuss, deliberate, identify the assets, list down that this real estate will go to the son, these bank accounts or these shareholdings in this company will go to the daughter. Now, the moment you have a family settlement detailing transfer of any asset, the law of the land is you have to pay a huge stamp duty. That's why people do not do family settlement. For settling a property in the for the benefit of a beneficiary through a family settlement during your lifetime is like transferring the real estate in person, and it's a conveyance. So that every state has a stamp duty. It's a state subject. It varies in every state. While I understand in Chennai it is few thousands of rupees, and therefore people do settlement deeds. And probate cost is more in Chennai as compared to family settlement. So I'm sure this question is coming. I'm not sure, but I think it is coming from somebody based out of Chennai or had an experience with Chennai real estate, especially to avoid probate. You do family settlement or a release deed. But in my experience, because of a huge stamp duty implication while doing a family settlement, or it's like a partition suit also, it's called settlement, which means settling properties between family members also. There's a huge stamp duty implication, especially in Karnataka, Bombay, etc. So people don't end up signing family settlement for transition of property. But yes, for settling issues like moral obligations, they do a family arrangement agreement. Like the daughters should study so much till they can go to Harvard. We'll fund the fees from this corpus, and so will take care of business. CEOs from outside of the family can take care of management of the company while the ownership remains within the family. All these wishes, the patriarch can get it on a piece of paper, get all the family members to sign it. In case a dispute arises later on, this family arrangement agreement is treated as a basis for coming to a consensus within the family, and court will take guidance from it. Yes.
Got it. We'll just take 2-3 more questions. If one daughter is not Indian citizen and holds citizenship of other country and is a OCI card holder, will she have issues in inheriting from parents who are Indian citizens?
No. FEMA, Indian income tax, and Indian succession laws are very much aligned when it comes to inheritances, bequest through a will. Everything is exempt. There's no tax on bequest. There's no FEMA restriction on taking property as a bequest. While FEMA says that non-resident Indians cannot hold agricultural land, but a Indian parent passing away leaving an agricultural land for an NRI daughter is allowed to be inherited by the NRI. So that much flexibility is available under Indian laws. We only need to be mindful that the freely repatriable money without any approval from RBI is $1 million in a year. Anything which you take as inheritance outside of India over 1 million will need RBI approval.
Okay, got it. Another thing, it was, can 2 different wills be executed on 2 different dates? I think
Don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just avoid complications.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take one last question. If some beneficiary is in US and some here, does the will still need to go through probate, or is one will or two separate needed?
I didn't understand the question. I'm sorry.
If some beneficiary is in the US and some is in India, does the will still need to go through the process of probate, or is one will or two separate needed?
So
I
if
think it's
if the property is in these three cities, you definitely need a probate irrespective of where your beneficiaries are. If you have RSUs in the US and an NRI beneficiary is claiming it, the testator was in India, the person who wrote the will was in India, then
Yeah.
the Indian will have to be probated in the US.
Got it. Sorry, Neha, one last question. If the movable asset is in Chennai, but the will is executed and registered in Bangalore, is probate done in Chennai or Bangalore courts?
Chennai courts, because the property, first rule is property in these three places. Second is will made in these three places. Does it need probate? If property is there, for sure you need a probate.
Okay. I think there are a few other questions on trust, but I think we would need to do another session with Neha on trusts for sure.
Yes, please.
So yeah, thank you, Neha, for such an insightful session. I'm sure if there's one message to take home, it's this: planning ahead is an act of love and responsibility. So thank you all for being here, being a part of today's conversation, and one that's not always easy to start, but incredibly important to have. Whether you start a will, talk with your family, or simply reflect on your legacy, you are already on the right path. So thank you again for your time and presence. Hoping you feel empowered to plan with care and confidence. So thank you, Neha, and thank you, everyone. Hoping to see you guys all again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you, Neha.